Hi, this is Gertrude, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, when that Katowice event happened after the Maikelele, when Allu first came in, right, there's two angles I want to ask about this event. So first of all, because of the score, obviously NIP could have won this final. They could have won this major as well. And I will say, one reason why I will always remember that is it's impossible for me not to, because at the time, if people don't know, Allu was so tilted by that final because he had that Dust 2 clip.
That's shot.
Like, mate, he showed me that clip as though it was like the JFK assassination film, you know, where you're like scrolling back in on like the frames, like, look, it's on him. Like, you know, like, he went so deep on that one, guys. Like that. Yeah. I was CS. That's it, because it's like the ultimate. I was CSGO'd basically. Like you might have won the map, obviously, and then the final. And then the other one is this is one thing I didn't find out till years later, because pros can be silly sometimes too. Like even though we're doing all the events, like sometimes if pros get mad at you, they won't tell you little secrets about what's going on in the team, and then later they get mad you don't know the secrets. It's like, give me a break. Will you work with me? So one thing no one told us back in the time, Friberg, was I've heard now from people who are in this lineup that the other reason why NIP got mad when they wouldn't win the events, then like we would all pick against him and stuff, is how I heard actually in scrims, though, this lineup was insane and they were like tearing everyone up, and like, you actually did think when you made the Allu swap, like we're going to win events, like we can win the major, maybe we're the best team. Is this accurate? Did you think you should have won this major?
Yeah, I mean, people might think I'm a hypocrite sitting here and saying it, but like we should maybe have won like 4 majors. If you're like, I think a lot of it came down to like us not being mentally in the game when things got that heated. We wanted it so much. Like I remember the first major, like we had a TV crew following us, like was a TV series about our team and everything. And like I think that also, like we are sitting there like before the third map doing like a sync with them, being like, also like, yeah, what will the feeling be when you win a major?
Oh
like
Jesus,
and
what a
like,
crazy question to ask before you've won as well.
Yeah, it was like, yes, it's weird. Sure. It's weird. But like definitely I think like we lost we lost a lot of majors. I would say, for example, the Dreamhack Winter one with Maikelele, we should have won. I think we could have won or should have won against Fnatic the first major. We saw it as well when the first major we beat Very Games in the semifinals, and that was like the biggest threat for us. Like I think we came into the final with one foot already through the door, and that's why we lost that one. The only major that we absolutely got destroyed against was the Virtus Pro one in Katowice the year 2014. And definitely, like you said, we could definitely also have won the 2015 major against Fnatic in Katowice with Allu. And yes, we were really good with Allu. Like, we were literally sitting and stomping people on practice. And this was early. Like, so this, I think Katowice was one of the first, or maybe we won like assembly before that. I can't remember, but like we had one tournament with Allu, we won, and then we went to the major, we lost the major, and I think that hit on us a lot as a team with confidence and everything. And I think if you look on 2015 as like results wise, we didn't win one more tournament after assembly, I'm pretty sure. We had like, I don't know how many second places it was. I think it was like close to 7 or 8 second places. Like we were not bad by any means, but we just, I don't know if we lacked something when it came to like winning, like the final, to just like play extra good in the final. We kind of lacked that with Allu, and nothing on Allu. I think Allu did everything we asked him to do. I think he played great. I think I had a really rough year 2015. That was really like the time after fifflaren left. That like we kind of noticed as well, like we don't really have a glue guy in the team, and I think I kind of transitioned to that because like fifflaren was the one who taught me CS, like how the team should work on the server and everything. So I had a really like individual rough year 2015 trying to like, you know, make the team work. And it was obviously very rough on us that we didn't go and win big tournaments in 2015, even though we were really good. But I would say that we lost a lot of confidence after losing like 2-3 finals in a year. You start to like stop believing in yourself that you almost can win more like tournaments. So yeah, it was rough.
As I said earlier, people like Get Right. I know even when they would win, I mean, the funny thing is some people would misinterpret it. They thought he was just a narcissist. Like I told you, even when he would win the match, sometimes I've even seen him complain if he had a bad score or thought he didn't do it. He always had that like crazy, like almost like Protestant work ethic of like, I must work harder, I must work harder. So I know he could never tolerate like losing. And even though people might think from his like on-stream persona, like Forrest's just some like happy-go-lucky, la la la, like he doesn't like to lose, guys. I'll tell you right now, like that fucking, and he, by the way, he also hates to fucking fucking lose if he actually thinks you're favoured to win the game. He gets mad fucking triggered if like an upset. Like the joke is, even like I say, he comes off super chill. But I bet if I talked to, I mean, I've actually done it, but if I brought up and out like one of these losses, I bet he'd immediately start thinking like, fuck, and then we should have won this one, and we could have picked this map and all that jazz. So like when you have legendary players that are used to winning, like they've won a lot in their careers. Remember, like at 1.6 as well. I'm sure it's hard to tolerate losing, right? Because it's one thing. I know this sounds weird if you're a fan, but a pro really would rather come 7th than come 2nd. Because coming 2nd, especially if like you had a chance, it tortures you, right? If you could have won.
Definitely. Yeah, like you said, I rather lose I'd rather get absolutely stomped as well than losing like a really tight game. Because then you also start to think like, oh, what if I would have like gone, if we went B instead of A this round? Then they would have had on an eco, we would have won the game. So like you say, yeah, definitely. And it was rough. Like I said, I think we were one of the teams, we really relied a lot on, I shouldn't say momentum, because like we weren't that momentum based. I would say like the Brazilian scene today is a lot more momentum based. If they got on a good start, they could just steamroll any team. But like we were more like not momentum, but like I would say confidence. Like we just, if we lacked confidence, we didn't perform like we should. And I think that also came down to show like in some finals, you know, you start to like have one foot through the door or think that you can win the game, and then then it's over. Like you start to do stupid mistakes, you don't play your game, stuff like that. And so I think I agree with you. Like if we had more confidence, if we maybe had like a mental coach back in the days, maybe we would have seen a different NIP, especially like with Allu, since we had so many second places. Because I remember like in the end of the year, like you almost didn't even believe that you could win another tournament. So yeah.
By the way, I do want to ask about some sort of behind-the-scenes flavour of Allu, because he's another person where people know by now, because actually in NC sort of got to show his personality and stuff like that, and obviously people did it a bit in NIP. But like this guy is also a really crazy guy as well. Like the amount of like first of all, he's another person where it's almost like out of a character out of The Office, like the American Office or something. He'll come, like I've told that story on a desk once. He really did just come to me at a time when NIP wasn't ever winning any tournaments, and then say like, "Are you going to pick us against Envious?" And I was like, "Well, of course not. It's fucking Envious. What are you talking about? They beat you every time." And he was like, "We will win." And I was like, "Okay." And then the joke is like, this is real. After the game, when you guys did win like the upset game or whatever, he then came up like, "And did you pick us?" I was like, "Well, no, why would I?" He's like, "Should have had faith." And I was like, what? It's like, it's just a really strange character. And also, I won't tell any of these stories, but if people know the stereotype of Finnish people and drinking, there are some legendary Allu ones that are like, defy belief. Like, they should be in a documentary somewhere, you know, like, give me a sense of this guy. Because I'll tell you what, as much as like people have the perception that Finns are like just cold and boring, like, this guy's a really interesting character, right?
Yeah, dude, I love Allu. What can I say about Allu? Like a super fun guy. He's also a little bit like, you know, northerner, I would say, like thick-skinned, where like if you get to him, he will open up and he will say a bunch of fun. Like I would say Allu says a lot of stuff first before thinking. He said so many crazy things, like I don't even want to say here. But like we had a lot of fun with Allu. He had a very chill approach as well. Like I think we were very professional in that sense. Like we were like, oh, like no alcohol, like during a tournament. We drink, even if we have like a day off, like before a game, we wouldn't be sitting and drinking. Like we would probably practice and try to act very professional. I think Allu came with a very chill approach to the game. He always was a few minutes late to the practice server. I was like, Allu, come on, it's like 3 minutes past now. Allu, where are you? And he's like, Adam, relax, it's fine, no problem. I'm like all the freaking time. So yeah, I love Allu. Like yeah, I did play with him later on in OpTic as well. It was like the same almost. But what can I say? Like I don't even know what to say about Allu. But like a great person, great friend to have, saying a lot of weird stuff, fun stuff. You laugh a lot when you're around him, and you laugh both with him and at him and stuff like that. So we had a lot of fun, absolutely, with Allu as well in the team.
It's also why I say, like, there's almost always a bit where you sort of like, is he totally joking or is he serious? Like, I'll give you an example. In this team, think of this time period, like it was like 2015. Bro, he won't mind me saying this, by the way. He's actually a super chill guy like this. He also understands, by the way, like, it's funny. I mean, think of the shit he's put on the internet, right? So what I'll say is this. I remember one time, literally when it was prime Kenny S, by the way, when at the time he was like melting all our brains and we're like, this is the greatest player ever. Him like trying to explain to me that he's actually better than Kenny S with the AWP. Like, and that, like, you know, if I ever went to watch like these specific demos, you know, I out-AWP'd him at this spot or whatever. And I remember just thinking, what the fuck fuck are you talking about? He's like the best player. But like, he really had that confidence, bro. Like, by the way, he's the guy who thinks he should have won all these tournaments. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, definitely. Like, allu was very confident. Like, he would say, like, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna fucking kill this guy. And, like, come with me, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna kill this guy and do like this. So, definitely, we deserved to win. And we have talked about this as well. I talked with allu. If we would have won, let's say, the major, or at least, like, early tournaments in 2015 after we brought him in, I think we would have had a blast year. Like, I think we would have a banger year. Because I think so many second places, like, we weren't bad. We just, like, didn't just have the mentality to win the tournaments, unfortunately, that year. But if we had some early success with allu, I'm sure that we could have kept playing with allu a lot longer, like, bringing home a lot of trophies that year, I'm sure.
Right, people might remember, I actually think this is almost perfect. In the movie, put it this way, if we made the movie of Friberg, this would be a scene in the movie, like maybe 2/3 of the way through. That famous scene when you went to Dreamhack Cluj-Napoca, which was obviously one of the majors where NIP was like pretty good, but not the best. Like obviously you upset TSM, etc. This was the major where famously, because at the time, the team's results were like a little bit dropping down like this, everyone was they were giving you the fifflaren treatment. You were getting all the scrutiny. Everyone was saying, oh, look at his stats. Like, oh, maybe they should replace this guy. I mean, the other problem also when you make roster moves is it opens the door to make even more roster moves, doesn't it? Like once you sort of break the dam, you can change anyone. So people were like, hey, this guy needs to go as well. Get this guy out. And obviously that's the downside, I will say, to play with people like Get Red Forest. You'll always have the fan who's only a fan of them, not the team. And then they're just like, hey, get this guy out. He's stopping my guy from winning the event. Even though I'll say this, I love those guys. They were playing worse too. They weren't like 2013 Get Red Forest guys. But in this scenario, people might remember there's an iconic photo of you from this major where you knew you were on the hot seat. So when everyone went home in the night, you were just grinding in that to put PC area, just trying to just get more hours in, more hours in, right? Do you remember this time period? Like, what was it like yourself? Because you went from being like, think about the beginning, you went from being one of like the sort of sleeper best players of the whole game to you're the one that everyone's sort of like swirling around and you have that media circus of like, should they fire you? As I'm sure when that happens, you're aware of it. Like, you must know if you have a bad game, fuck, that's going to happen again, or I've lost, they're going to blame me. What was this time period like? Like, was that photo really because you were like just trying to give it everything you had? What was going on?
Yeah, definitely. I remember that photo. I think we lost one of the games and we had like a decider game or whatever it was. And I had been playing, like I said, 2015 was not a great year for me at all. And I think a lot of it came down to like just role swapping. Like I wasn't like entering like I did back in the days. Exist was never really like the supportive in-game leader, like you could see a Carrigan or like a Snappy today or like a Hooksy, you know, when they were like, you know, they played a bit more sacrificial for the team's benefit. And I do think it is still needed for someone to take a step back in a team. Like, you can't just buy a second round, you can't buy 5 AKs with no grenades and just like expect to be blasting people, right? You need someone to maybe buy a Mach 10, to buy nades and take a step back from like fragging. And I don't even know, like, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I have done in my career, is that I did that. I think I should have maybe have, like, asked Exist, like, I should have told him, be more, like, more upfront and said, like, hey, like, I am still, like, the most aggressive guy in the team. I think I am needed to be, like, you know, still, you know, going out there and fragging instead of, like, me buying all the nades and, like, you know, being the guy throwing nades and stuff, because that's not my role. That's not how I'm supposed to play either. So 2015 was a really rough year for me, definitely. Like, also, it hits you, like, when, especially, like, all the medias and all the people are talking about it. Like, I've always tried to be very, like, thick-skinned when it comes to, like, reading social medias and stuff like that. But, like, eventually it gets to you. It definitely does. No one can say it doesn't. And you try to always say, no, like, I don't care about it. But obviously, when you're thinking and you see the stats and you're like, okay, maybe they are right. Or, like, are they right? Like, am I that bad? So yeah, confidence, and we talked about it before, how important confidence is. And then your confidence is getting lower and lower and lower, and you're starting to, like, doubt yourself when you're making plays and stuff like that. Look back when I played in 2012, 2013, I never doubted. If I went for a play, I 100% thought, I'm going to kill this guy and I'm going to win the duel. But when you start losing confidence, you start to doubt if you're even going to get the kill, and then you will not win that duel. So yeah, it was a rough year. But I do remember, after I sat and I played that day, I played extra, like, a few hours at the... I think that was the day before we destroyed TSM, and I had, like, one of the best games in all of 2015. Yeah. So it pays off to grind as well, you could say, sometimes.
By the way, that must have been a mad satisfying one, because if people don't remember as well, this is when TSM had already, in theory, overlapped you guys. Like, they'd already gone to the top, and they even were beating you directly. So I know for this game, by the way, I even think TSM thought this. I think everyone just thought NIP is going to get beaten, and who gives a shit? You know, it's TSM going on. Like, it must have been an amazing game to have such a, like, because it was the ultimate, like, sort of show everyone that they're wrong game, right? Because you were dominating this match.
Yeah, definitely. I remember, like, also, I think it was like a train, I'm pretty sure we played, and that I didn't really have that supportive of a role. Like, I played Ivy, and like I had a very good nade set to get like past the AWPers and everything like that. So when I got that space, and I got like more of like not trying to be a supportive player and like just fragging out, and just like, you know, playing a bunch of DM also, like, you're always gonna be like, when you're at a tournament, you're always gonna be at your like top 9 to 10 like level, right? But like when you sit and you play that, and you get that extra like confidence by just sitting and killing bots, and you're like, I'm gonna smash tomorrow, because that was the mindset I had. And I knew, like, we played TSM, like, these guys I have beaten in the past, like, I know how to win against these guys, right? So I think just that extra boost of confidence really like hit me that game, and that could change the course of the game. Like, people talk about like Nip Magic, and like we have like those players. We have always had players who could just like, you know, win a game. Like, nowadays you have a Cyber, you have a Donkey, you have a Simple who can like go in and just completely dominate the game. But like more quietly, I think we in NIP has also had a lot of individual skill. Like Forest, we have had Get Right. Exist is also like a sleeper in-game leader. He has pulled off so many insane plays. Like, people don't maybe see Exist as like a fragger, but like the way he was fragging as an in-game leader was also like one of the key parts to why we had so much success with NIP back in the days. Like, we had so many individuals in a team who could actually go in and like win a game if the team were like, we're on like a bad stint or whatever. We had individuals who could step up and like actually win us games. And I think we always also believed in ourselves. Like, I've missed that. I can tell you that. Like, after NIP, when I played in OpTic, I played in Heroic, Dignitas, I never really thought that, okay, we can go and we can actually win this tournament. But when I played back with Forest and Get Right and Exist back in NIP, I've always had the thought, like, we can win this tournament. We just need to, like, you know, get in the tournament and start, like, improving game by game by game. We could win any tournament that we go to. And I do miss that, because that was some sort of, like, underlying confidence that we had in ourselves. And I think that's also, like, one of the key to like all the NIP magic, whatever you call it, is that we always thought that we could win, and that was like one of the things.
Right, obviously, because the lineup didn't win with allu, eventually the decision was made to make the player change. You got that Pit guy in, and then also around this time was when Threat took over as the coach. Right, what would you say? Like, you said it earlier, I think you actually phrased it very well, which is the reason why I'll even say it was the perception in the scene that like NIP might be the uncoachable team, but it's because the team had figured out all that success themselves before the coaching. It makes sense, and I get the vibe. Like, if you already have like a setup where it's sort of like there's even unspoken rules of it, just works this way. You don't want to fuck with it. You don't want to mess with it and prod it and make it all go wrong. So, but when the difference was, people like Peter and Natu, I got the sense they were sort of like gradually warming you up to a bit of the coaching ideas. They bring a lot more, like, I've heard a lot of them just watch demos and give, you know, a second set pair of eyes and stuff. But obviously when Threat comes in, Threat really is coming in, right, to be the proper full-on coach. In fact, this was even the era when he was able to call as the IGL because he could talk in the actual game, right? So what was it like to have this guy come in and working with you? Because I get the vibe he has a very different perspective on CS than old NIP.
Yeah, he was more like fifflaren, I would say, like more tactical in that sense. He liked structure and everything, and I think we lacked a lot of confidence. Like I said, in 2015, we didn't really win any big titles, so we brought Threat in, and he was like literally in-game leading. Like, he was calling. You were allowed, like, the coach could talk at any time back at this in 2016. So he was taking over the reins from Exist, like, especially from spawn. He would be like, okay, we should set up like this, like start the round towards here, and we try to end up here. And then Exist would like mid-round call if things changed and stuff like that. So it was a huge change. I think Pita was a great coach for us back in 2014. We had Pita when we won the major. He was very like, he was vibing with us. Like, he didn't want to come in and change too many things. I remember like before the major we won in Cologne, he just gave me like a small note saying like, they like to do this on Banana Inferno, so be careful when you go up there. Like, they double nade here a lot, so don't go in there, for example. So just small things like that, and that kind of helped us just like with these small things. But Threat came in, and that was like an overhaul. Like, we changed the whole structure of the team. We became like a very methodically playing team, like we played structured CS. I like that. I embrace that. I think 2016 for me especially was a better year. I wasn't like, mad fragging maybe like I was back in 2012, 2013, but like I liked the structure because that then also it gave like I didn't have to do all the nades basically. I didn't have to be the support guy when we had a threat on the team. He kind of called out who was doing what in those. So when Threat came in 2016, I'm pretty sure we also won some tournaments. 2016, I think we won like
Dreamhack Malmo
tournaments. Yeah, Dreamhack Malmo, definitely. That was like Dreamhack Malmo is one of the best wins in my career since it was back in Sweden. We have had like a rough 2015. So definitely like that and the major are the two tournaments who is like that's closest to me from like my playing career. That we won in front of our like home crowd, stepping out of the boots were really solid.
Oh, the atmosphere was unbelievable, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, like opening that.
Dude, it felt like a major.
Punched you.
It was like a major, wasn't it? The vibe was crazy.
It was like a major. Like, obviously, it wasn't a major, but for us, it felt like a major since it was on home soil and everything. But yeah, Threat had a really good eye for the game. We also, I think, in 2016 had a good mix of Exist and Threat, kind of like the one we had with fifflaren and Exist back in the days, where like I've always said it, and I think Exist has changed a lot now since he's a coach now. He's way more tactical and stuff like that. But he's been really good at like the small things, whereas like we have someone coming in with like the bigger picture, the structure, the nades, and setting up everything. So Threat was a great addition to our team. He found a lot of like cool strats and stuff like no one else found before. On Cobble, I remember we made like throwing a wall of smokes from like outside mid, which no one has found, and we Threat found it, and we kind of like just jumped into like the first tournament. I remember playing Cobble on LAN, and like we just won a game like straight up easy because of one strat that we could fake. So very tactical, and Pith as well. In one way, Pith was like a weird addition from us, but like I remember as well, to be completely honest, that we were looking around and we were like, we're not even sure like who we could pick. Fnatic was like winning. Obviously, 2015 was a great year for Fnatic, so we couldn't just grab someone from that team. And we were looking around the Swedish scene. We did not look internationally at that time because we did have Allu. We were talking English with Allu, so we did want a Swedish player, and the player pool was pretty small back then, at least from players that we knew that we wanted to play with. So we ended up playing with Pith, and he was also like a sick aimer, like a young talent at that time. So I think Pith did what we asked him to do. We had some success in 2016, but maybe not as much as we had in the past. I think we won, maybe you remember, you have good memory, Duncan. We won Malmo, we won Oakland. Oakland we won 2016 as well. And one more tournament in the spring, which I can't remember. Maybe you remember which one it was, but yeah.
No, Starlad. It was when Maikelele stood in again.
Oh yeah. Maikelele, yeah. I remember.
Came back for that one event. Which I will say, in the joke is just then blue balls. Everyone like, what if he'd been there the whole time? Even though like we've discussed already why that couldn't happen. That wasn't an option, guys. Like that was a road that wasn't going to be explored. All right, what about this?
That's what I think as well is sad, because like we go back to 2014 when fifflaren was removed and they added Michael. I think it's sad because we might even have picked Michael, like to be our fifth player, but we wanted to pick ourselves. Right. And I think that was like one of the issues. Michael was a great player and everything, and I think we could have done very well with him if we kept playing with Michael. It was more like we were salty about like the whole management thing, that we didn't get to pick player ourselves, that we were kind of like forced to play with Michael without us even exploring our options. Like, hey, fifflaren is removed. Michael is home ready on TeamSpeak when you come home, by the way. And you're like, what the hell? So yeah, that's sad. But we did have a lot of fun. For example, in 2016, they're winning Starlighter with Michael, I remember. He played great as well. So yeah, sad, but so much shit has happened. So you never know what could have been, right?
By the way, that's one thing I actually do wonder about. Is the weird thing is, technically in 2015, you could argue NIP was actually better than it was in 2016. It's just in 2016, you guys actually had, like we were talking about earlier, what actually most pros would trade. It's like, I'll take Bob in a bunch of events if I get to win some events. So yeah, if I can, fuck it, I'll lose 3 if I can win 1. Whereas, like you say, the Nightmare is second, third to fourth, second, third, fourth, and then like a Nightmare, super close finals loss. Like when you won the Oakland event, like this was obviously like one of the all-time, like out of nowhere wins. I mean, if people don't know, the team you beat in the final, SK Gamer was the #1 team in the world. Yeah. They'd won the major. And at the time, by the way, I think even in this final, Cold Zero was sick, mate. They were just like, it was a very hard team to beat at the time. It was kind of a crazy event to win, right?
Definitely. Like, and that's kind of like I told you before, like we always had that in our head. I don't know if we were brain damaged or whatever we were, but we always thought that we could win tournaments. And we always, we had that in us. So I remember even like I think even we were like top rank 1 after winning that Oakland tournament for a brief time in 2016. But like you said, overall stability, we were better with allu, definitely. In 2016, should be mentioned though that Pyth had his carpal tunnel.
Oh, right.
So he was that was why we played with Michael and stuff like that. We had to play. He also had visa issues to the US,
yes.
so we had to play with Threat in the major. So there's also a lot of that could have been if we had Pyth to play with him all the time, with no injury, with no visa issues. What could have happened then? So in that sense, that's why I think that considering that, that's why we think that 2016 was a good year, because we did win some titles and we did compete with the very best at that year. Whereas in 2015, we didn't win a single big title. So.
By the way, being as in early CSGO, especially, you were like the ultimate entry. You always were going in, and this is the era before like full. This isn't some Astralis 2018 shit. Like sometimes you're just going in off like no flashes or one flash, and you better hope that hits the right people in the site, right? In this era, also, this was the era before the AWPer Friberg. So give me a sense. What was it like back in the day to try and run into an angle of like Kenny S and Guardian? All the bonkers AWPers we had. Like, what was it like before the AWP got nerfed?
And it was incredibly rough. Especially, I remember like what Kenny was like. Playing as Kenny was like, you knew what he could do, and you were expecting him to do that, so you weren't surprised. Guardian, super hard to play against because he was more of like the slow peaking AWPer, but when he took the shot, he would just like disappear before the AWP nerf, right? So he was more of the like structural playing, but the most annoying AWPer to play against was definitely JW, because he had the C set as well. Like we were complaining so much to Valve, and we're like, dude, you guys have to make like the C set like a SMG or whatever. You can't have the AWP and the C set. He would go aggro, shoot an AWP shot, disappear, and then come back with the C set and burst you to death, and you would be like absolutely out of it. But yeah, it was hard playing against AWPers, like especially being an entry during like especially 2015, I think, when like you had Kenny, you had JW, you had so many good AWPers like really coming into the scene and becoming good at the game. Definitely hard to be like you said, an entry fragger. You're the first guy in, you're the guy tanking the first bullet, and if it's an AWP bullet, it's rough because then you're out of the server. So but yeah, I think that also proved how important it was for us to take a step back with like utility and stuff like that. That was also like why I also started throwing a lot more nades and stuff in 2015, because obviously you can't just dry peek into Kenny. Kenny will kill you. Guardian will kill you. Like, all the good AWPers, they will just kill you. You need to use utility. You need to try to make it as hard for them as possible. So definitely we had to like a lot of thinking and stuff like that during 2015. Allu was very confident as well, where he would be like, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna fucking kill him, I will challenge anyone. He would just go and he would challenge anyone, and a lot of the times he had success, some of he didn't. So it was also where like I said, I didn't really entry as much because we knew if there's an AWPer standing there, I don't want to be the guy peeking. We want allu to come and peek him instead. So the game developed a lot, I would say, 2015, 2016 as well.
I know, especially in the era when you left NIP, this time period was when, like, look, first of all, obviously, you'll know if your level's not as good, like, I might be in trouble here, but I've always tried to explain to fans, like, usually what's weird is, especially I'll say in Swedish teams as well, because people are so non-confrontational, they don't want to have a big argument and leave on a bad note. It's like, I've always noticed that the roster moves tend to come, and it's like no one talks about it. Like, the other players must know, like, he might be on the chopping block, or maybe if they get to decide, maybe we're even replacing him. And it's like, but they're not going to tell the person, and they're not going to do the like thing that people would say now of like, well, what was I doing wrong? They're not going to come to you and go, look, if you do these three things, you can. It's more like when they decide, and it's that, it's that the move almost like starts its genesis there, and then if you're the player in most scenarios, you either get a weird vibe from people, like something's going wrong here, like they're not reacting the same way, or even worse, you hear the rumours yourself. You'll hear through a group of people like, wait a minute, they're thinking about getting this guy, and you're like, wait a minute, what the fuck? And then you realise, oh, it's true. How did it happen with you? Did it come out of nowhere? Did you get a sense of like, I'm on the hot seat here when it was towards the end?
Definitely. Like 2017, we had Draken joining the team. That was also like an addition made by management, and we also heard from management, like, or someone leaked or whatever, like, where they said, like, okay, so Draken is like unremovable now, like he's gonna be in the team. So if anyone is gonna get kicked, it's not gonna be Draken, it's gonna be one of the older guys. And obviously, with like, we didn't have success. I didn't really click. Like, out of the game, I clicked very good with Draken. Like, I think he's a great guy and everything. But in game, we didn't click at all. Also, like, he didn't really. The vibe we had in the team, where we were like, we were not sitting and complaining. I know, for example, both me and Getright had issues with someone like desk slamming or also body language. If we lost someone was sitting, like, like just dying, or like, body language was the energy you spread, basically. If you're sitting on a LAN event, body language and like the way you communicate, the way if you smash your desk, it affects your teammates, basically. So we had those issues a lot with Draken in the team, and when we lost a major qualifier, we were down in our boot camp area. When we lost the major qualifier in 2017, there I was feeling very fed up with the team. Like, we sat down, we went for beer after, and I even said, like, I think it's better to just like move on now. Like, we've had good runs, so it was very like expected. I wasn't really like backstabbed, I would say, in that sense. I was expecting to be cut, or like I didn't even mind it. I kind of wanted a new challenge as well, because I didn't really feel like with Draken in the team, I didn't really see us, to be completely honest, I didn't see us like going and winning tournaments with the vibe and everything that we had in the team. So yeah, wasn't really that unexpected, I would say. No, not when I got cut from the team.
Right, one of the weird things is when you went to this OpTic Gaming team, this lineup, the joke is it actually looks great now when I look back at it. But at the time, this is the craziest, like, weird lineup I've ever seen, because obviously, like, CS wasn't Dota. We didn't have international teams back then. There was just FaZe Clan, basically, and that was it. Like, and except like rare case, like you say, that you speak English because Allu doesn't speak fluent Swedish. That's about it, right? Aside from that, people did stay in their own groups. So if I read off this lineup to people, they had Mixwell, who obviously was in the other OpTic where they'd won over Astralis and that. They had Friberg himself. Allu was there again because he was available at this point. Magisk, before he went to Astralis, was there. So, I mean, the joke is at the time, though, was like he'd been good in North, but obviously he goes on to win all the fucking shit of that. And then the last guy was the one that people won't remember now, the historian player HS. He was all right, though. And then the coach, actually, this is the other underrated part. The coach was I'm a Pet, who later, I mean, he's now a coach in Valorant. He's mega successful. And later he was in like EG and NRG and all these teams and had all the success with DAPS and Stanislaw and stuff. Like, when you look back, it's actually a pretty good lineup X has made it. Like, this is an interesting project. Like, isn't there a world where like this could have worked?
Definitely. We are behind the scenes now, like talking behind it, or like afterwards. We were really close. We wanted to have Naf in the team, but Naf wasn't sure. Like, he wanted to play with us. He was like against living in Europe at that time. Obviously, that was like pretty unheard of. Even though we had to play both the FACEIT and the ESL League from the US, because we had the OpTic slot. So we traveled to there and we played everything from the US, then we went back home to Europe, and obviously a lot of tournaments. We also did play all the NA qualifiers, which was easy at that time. So we qualified to like all the big tournaments, but we were like, I know it was Mixwell who kind of like brought up the idea of bringing on the team, and then we started like, building. So we had a few role clashes with like Mixwell, who used to be the opera in old OpTic, but then we brought in Allu because Mixwell said that he didn't really want to be like primary opping, but then eventually he went on to like, when we didn't have that success we wanted, he wanted to be the main opera, and that caused some fraction. Allu started rifling and stuff. It was some weird stuff happening. Magisk was like young at that time, but I think he was still really like, he was a solid player, like a really good anchor player, even back in OpTic time. But I'm thinking more of like what could have been, because we also tried like so many weird things happening. Like, first of all, then we tried to get Naf when we created the team. He didn't want to join. He joined Renegades, I'm pretty sure. But like after a few months, he didn't really enjoy playing in Renegades. And then we tried to make like a swap because he wanted to come back to us.
Oh, right.
I think we would have been insane if we had Naf, because we had Naf standing in when we were like in Europe. I can't remember what we were supposed to play an NA game, but we had to play it from home in Europe. We played with like 110 ping, but we had to bring a stand-in for HS, and we brought in Naf, and we just had so much fun with Naf. And I think then Naf kind of also saw that, okay, we had some potential. So I know he talked with I'm a Pet, and we tried to make a swap happen between HS and NAF, but it didn't really pan out, unfortunately. But I think we were like a change or two away from in OpTic to be like a good team. I'm pretty like I think we were ranked. We were a top 15 team in the world. I think we hit top 11. Like we kind of then the team kind of dissipated. Obviously, OpTic they did have higher hopes for us. They wanted us to be a title contender. We weren't really there without changes, and we told them, and they like obviously had spent some money on like building the team, and it was only a few months in, so they weren't too keen on like rebuilding at that point. So the team kind of died after. I think we only played for half a year or something. We did qualify for big tournaments. We ended up playing some, like, I think we played a few playoffs, but like, yeah, we weren't a title contender with the OpTic lineup, no.
I saw as well, I looked it up. The brutal thing is, you guys finished third in the minor to qualify to the major, and so third was the spot that missed out, and then both the losses are like close games, like the Space Soldiers one's like an OT one, and then the one against Envy is like they're both close maps, like you could also have gone to the major.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I remember that. We played in Bucharest, Romania. That was very close, and I think it was some weird games we lost, like some really close games that really cost us to like not win. I can't remember exactly what it was, but we were really close, and that also hit us hard that we failed to qualify for the major. That was obviously one of the main goals, obviously, for every team to qualify to the major itself. But that also kind of, I think, from OpTic's point of view, when we failed to qualify, that was kind of it after that.
What about, an obvious thing I must ask you about is, if people think of the original Friberg and his strength, right? I'll give you the obvious example. Now I've got one that's not even a rude example to give. It's like Apex, right? No one would ever guess Apex would be the in-game leader of Vitality, because the perception, even though it's rude, of entry fraggers is like they're supposed to not have a brain, and you just, in fact, that's a positive. You turn the brain off so you don't worry about how many flashes and the fact that these guys are going to gangbang you when you run the site. You just run in there and hope for the best, and then, you know, I'm sure this call's great. Let's not worry about whether it'll work or not. I'll just go in. So people would think, well, that player will never be an IGL. What was it like to be the in-game leader? Because obviously you took the role on, right? Like, you were the one who took it on in this team. Must have been interesting, especially leading an international team.
Yeah, it was really tough. Like transitioning to an in-game leader is really hard. Obviously, whenever you're playing, you have momentum. Everyone can call. If you're up 7-0, you can have 5 in-game leaders in your team. When shit hits the fan and you're down 0-7, then it's harder to be in-game leader. But I must say, also give props to I'm a Pet, to Chet. He was a great coach. He helped me a lot in game leading. He was working his ass off, dude. He had like, he's a super smart guy. He has like great knowledge of the game, even though he hasn't like played on a high level himself. So he helped out a lot. He created a lot of strats for us and made it so much easier for us to like go through and everything. He kind of had a new way of going through and doing strats where he would like literally sit and create like a video to every player. Like, here is what you're supposed to do. So he did every role, and then just, okay, guys, we're going to go through a new strat. Everyone just looked at their video, and then we like went in to dry run it, and it took like 5 minutes, and we had a really good strat. So he was really hardworking, really efficient. And he did help me out a lot as well, like creating a game plan before the game. So like calling, I wouldn't say I was great at calling. I wasn't really good at calling back in the OpTic days. It's all a very, very different way you play CS when you play it with an international team. Like cultural things as well. You know, like I said, we used to play with Swedish players. We have our way of playing the game, and then coming into an international team, it was different. But I'm a Pet definitely made it like easier, at least, to play or to be the in-game leader.
One thing, even though this will just sound like a totally frivolous thing, the reason I want to ask you this, Friberg, is because I actually know Hex. Like, one thing I'll say I always thought was very cool is this, right? Everyone knows that, like, when you hear about people from coming from Call of Duty and you're from Counter-Strike, right? If you're from the year away from Friberg, you automatically are a bit dismissive. You sort of like, it's like that meme of like, you know, YOLO 420 swag, like no scopes, and you think, who gives a shit about it? It's just some American bullshit. You think, like, you just think, mate, it's just like, I mean, I always used to literally listen. I'm Thorin, mate. Even when I would meet them at events and they'd come up all legendary COD players, I would be like, look, you are aware Search and Destroy is just a bad version of Counter-Strike. So that's who I am, mate. I would just tell them basically, basically you'd get murked by like any team. It's not true, but I would say anyway back in the day, right? So the obvious angle is this, right? This is what people won't know though, is that Hex actually was a rare example of someone who knew the history of Counter-Strike. Like he was actually very respectful of like top CS players. In fact, I'll even say he's one of the first owners that ever came to me and asked me stuff like, what team should I pick up, or should I get this set of team? He actually was trying to do is like sort of respect the scene in a way. And one thing I know would have been amazing in this team with you, Allu, I think some of the personalities, is he didn't get a chance to do it because the team didn't have the success. But Hex's whole formula wasn't just you win in the game. It's that once you win in the game, like he did with the Call of Duty players, you do all the media shit. You have like vlogs. That's why you go to the team house. You create content. And like, dude, I think this mix of players that you would have thrived in that environment if you actually had a chance to do something like that. I feel like you could have done a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah, I did. I remember I did vlogging back in when I played in OpTic. After I stopped playing in OpTic, it was kind of like, okay, now I'm only sitting here at home and I'm like, what to create content about, right? Sure. But like you said, it's and I think a lot of players today should start doing it as well. It's obviously like super interesting to when you're not at the tournament. You do want to see behind the scenes. Yes. You do want to see what's happening in the team house. You do like there's so much content which people would actually want to see. What it's like to be in a team house, what it's like to be traveling to tournaments, being at a tournament and stuff like that. So I did vlog a bit at that time. I should maybe have invested in someone like doing all the editing and stuff for me. I tried to do it myself. I tested it. It was fun, like going and doing stuff, but like being home here in Sweden, my house, when I was just literally chilling, had no content to do. I kind of stopped it. But Hector, coming back to him, I must say that he's one of the guys I respect the most when it comes to esports. I only knew him then for like a few months during the time I played in OpTic, but the way he managed us, the way he helped us to do all the different things that we did, and like literally we were our team house was like I don't know, a quick car ride away from his home. He was literally driving, getting us food. Right. We were there like always like helping out, and he had obviously other teams to attend to as well, but he was like, the way he spent his time and how much he cared for us really warmed my heart to like when I think back now. And I think he's one of the esports greats in my eyes to really see how much he's doing for his teams and he has done for his brand in OpTic as well. So huge shout out to Hector. Really grateful for what he did for me and for our team when we played for him.
By the way, when we do these interviews, if people are retired, I often use that line, like, you know, the statute of limitations has passed, guys. We can tell stories about things. No one can get mad now about like a roster move that could have happened in 2016 because it's fucking 2024. No one cares anymore. So was there ever along the time, was there ever like any offers you didn't take? Did you ever get like an interesting offer or one that you now maybe that team became better than you thought they would be? Or something? Was there ever any other ones in the mix that you were thinking about?
Well, the NIP team, we were dead at some point where like Exist would go to, I think it was like Fnatic. Like our team was literally really dead.
Was this the one where I know at the end of 2015 there was that one where some of them were going to go and make the G2 lineup? I think wasn't it? They were going to go and play with Rain or something, right? Yeah, exactly. So I know like. I can't remember where everyone was supposed to go. I had talked to Forrest and we were like talking about trading something, and we just kept on playing with NIP lineup, and like obviously we had success after. When we started thinking like, okay, this team is dead, and we just like had fun, then was the time that we started playing well again. Right. But yeah, the team was dead. I don't think I was the guy talking to too many teams at that point. I was obviously, like I said as well, having a rough 2015, but I remember at least talking to Forrest, and I think it was me, Forrest, Get Right, we're supposed to do something. If Exist wanted to go somewhere else or whatever, yeah, it ended up nothing ended up happening then, obviously, but that was one of the times at NIP. In OpTic, we talked a lot about signing Dennis. I remember we talked a lot about signing NAF. So if we made those changes, they could have been good as well. In OpTic, then I think we could have had the successes. At least if we had NAF in the lineup from the get-go, I think we could have actually been really good. Like NAF, even back then, he was incredible. So yeah, those are like, I guess, from that point. In Heroic, I don't know. We had like Heroic was a weird project in that sense. I can't really remember from Heroic times, but yeah, I think the juicy one was probably like NIP. We were supposed to split up back in 2015. Didn't happen though because of, I guess, people started like
playing better, or like we didn't care as much, or we started having fun again instead of sitting in practice. I think we also didn't practice for like a full week or something before a tournament, and we just came there and we just had fun. And then we started playing well, but when we had fun, and then it was kind of like a wake-up call. Oh shit, like we've just been too serious, like losing, and we're looking at the bad results and not like enjoying ourselves. And after that, we started playing well again.
Being as this period was just before Magisk actually got to join Astralis and then won like everything seemingly, who was he like as a player? What was he like?
He was. I remember like the in-game leading him. He was pushing a lot. Like he was also that youngster. I saw myself a lot in him, where he pushed, like he tried to play slow around, and all of a sudden he would either die or get 2 entries. Like he was. You had to kind of like shame him a little bit, not teach him in that sense, but like, you know, get him integrated into the team game. But super talented, like his aim and like awareness, and like I said, I don't know what it is, but some sort of timing as well. Like I saw something in him, which I've also seen in other great players, where they like, you know, they have their timing they peak on, for example, or when they do a clutch or whatever they do, they just have something special, the feeling for the game. He had it, and I saw it even back then. So I remember like that was also one of the things that kind of killed our team, I would say. Like Allu. And I don't know if Allu had some other offer. I know he checked his options at least. But when Magisk went to Astralis, that our OpTic team was like the nail in the coffin for that team. But I wasn't surprised. And he even asked us. He asked me what for advice. Should I do it or should I not? And I told him you should definitely do it. Like I think you can be a great addition to the team and you can start winning titles. And they did. So I'm happy for him that he walked down that path, because obviously with the success Astralis team and Magisk had, he's been a great player.
If people go back and look at the heroic lineups you were playing with, they're mainly ones where it's people who are sort of like lower end of tier 1 pros. It's people like the Esatags, Nico with the small K, the Danish one, obviously Asilian. I mean, it was only way later you got like BlameF, for example, who was like an up and comer. It was mainly all the people where it's sort of like, it's people in their known quantities. They're like decent players, like they've been in teams. It was like a weird mix of like Swedish and Danish players mainly, etc. Right? In this squad, right, what I want to ask is this. It feels like this automatically was a step down, because if you go and look, it's like even then, like the big events are like the smaller Dreamhacks when not every team events. I even noticed actually at this time, a lot of people might not know this, but I know those Epsilon Swedish guys, Fraddy B and all them did the same thing. This was the era when you could go and farm small events. So you could go to all those events in Asia where you win like 50k if you come first for beating like Tyloo or some Australian team or something like. So essentially you were still like very active, but it's like a step below. Were you okay with that? Could you handle that mentally? I know for some people, I know some pros where if they can't be at the top, they almost need to retire. They can't handle not feeling like they can win the biggest tournament or being the most relevant. Were you able to mentally handle being at like a low level or feeling like you have to rebuild?
Yeah, I felt it was a great like move for me. Obviously I sat and I was waiting for someone to call me from like, you know, one of the big teams. Didn't really get a call at that time, and I didn't want to just sit and do nothing. So when Heroic called me, I was like, I still want to play. I love the game too much. Like I don't want to be that guy who only plays in tier 1 or I don't play at all. Because so when I joined the Heroic project, it was still like they were owned by Refresh. They were like the B team, I would say, to Astralis. But at the same time, basically one of the things that I told them was like, what I want to do with this team is to play at the big tournaments. So I think in that sense, the Heroic stint I played there for like 18 months or something like that, maybe shorter. We had success considering obviously then what level we were playing in. We qualified almost for every big tournament, and we were always the team at the tournament who no one really wanted to play against. No one wanted to play against us in a best of 1, because we could literally win against any team. We had some really good runs in big tournaments as well, like and then ending top 8 and stuff like that, when, you know, obviously we were maybe ranked top 20 or whatever. So I'm in that way, I'm really happy that I did go back and play in Heroic, because I also got to know that part of CS. I've always, you know, only played at the top tier level. But also the game did develop a lot. Obviously, a lot of good new young players coming in, a lot of new teams investing in Counter-Strike. I think you had at that time maybe 20 teams who were like, paid teams, competing at the highest level and everything. So it was a fun time, before also the franchising and everything. You could always qualify. Like there were a bunch of spots you could always try to qualify to in the teams. But one of the things I do regret is by joining Heroics that I wish I did the same journey, but in the Swedish scene. But I guess that we didn't have the same, like I wasn't paid a ton. I was literally paid enough to pay my bills basically when I played in Heroic. So for me it was never about the money, but like I wish when I look back that I would have done the same journey like I did in Heroic, where we brought in a lot of new players. Like one were maybe gone off to another better team or whatever. I wish I would have done that in the Swedish scene, because I feel like the Swedish scene has lacked someone like me, to like an older player who has been at the top, to come back and help like the young kids improve. We haven't really had that in Sweden. In Denmark, they have had Hunden, for example. Hunden is a great example. A lot of the pros today, the best Danish players, they have played with Hunden or has been coached by Hunden. Yes. I think he doesn't get. Obviously, a lot of stuff has happened around Hunden, like we know. Sure. But he has done so much for the Danish scene, and I'm sure all the Danes would agree with me on that one. So I'm sad that maybe we didn't get like a Swedish project being, supported by someone like, basically has to pay my bills, but that we could bring in Swedish players and do the same journey, because I think that would have helped the Swedish scene to improve. We didn't really have, Swedish has always been at the top, but the semi-tier on Sweden really dropped out after like 2014, 15, because after us and Fnatic, there was a huge gap down to, for example, like you said, Epsilon and those other teams.
By the way, when you were in this team, obviously towards the end, you got to play with young BlameF when he was coming along, and he was actually like, I mean, he was already, if people don't know, he was already a stud, right? You could tell he was a skilled player. Who was this guy?
Yeah, like I think it was Mertz who, like, I played with this young guy. Like that was basically how we brought in new players. I think it was after Moddy left the team. Mertz said that this BlameF guy looks super talented. We should bring him in, and he was insane, like individual mechanics and everything. I think BlameF individually was incredibly well. The thing that really didn't work out for us in that team, like I've said, we've always had like, I've tried to create this vibe in the team where like, we are a team, we're a unit, we should be working as a 5. BlameF saw it more of a, like, what do you call it, a next step. Like this was only a step in his path to becoming, so that was kind of obvious after a few months in playing with him. But I think he did play really well, but we did have some internal issues with the team when we played with BlameF, that like stats, and like he cared about, like, we had a discussion about it. He did say that he cares about stats in the sense that people are looking at stats. If he want to get picked up by a better team, he needs to have good stats, and so that was an issue for us. Like I said, I've always had the mentality that the only stat which is important is if you win or if you lose. Some of the younger players, that's not the only BlameF, some more young players, they look at stats, and they want to have good stats to maybe get to the next level of playing in a better team or whatever.
By the way, before the Dignitas project came along, I saw you briefly stood in for the Swedish Gamer Legion team in some like online cops or something. After the Heroic project, was there like a different route that could have happened? What would you have done if Dignitas project hadn't come?
Like I said, I still wanted to play. Like I wasn't done at all with playing, and I wanted to come back to the Swedish scene, which was kind of like, it was intriguing when the Gamer Legion poached me as well, but I was already like in a little bit of a talks to do that NIP or like NIP reunion in Dignitas. So I remember I talked to Hampus, who was a part of Gamer Legion at that time. We said like we could have been pretty good. Like that would have been when I look back, I should have played for Gamer Legion instead of Heroic. In my eyes, like to help, the Swedish generation, like I said. So I've always wanted to play and I keep on playing. But when we created the Dignitas project, like if that wouldn't have happened, I don't know, like I would probably have tried to find another Swedish team. Like I said, for me, it's never been about the money. I've been in the unlucky part of CS where we were
the time when you the times
like when we were peaking when we played in NIP. Sure. What was our monthly salary? We were making like $1,500 before tax, and tax is pretty high in Sweden. So that was like literally not enough to pay our bills when we played the first 2 years in NIP. So if we didn't win tournaments, we might have had to, work part-time or whatever. Yes. I shared an apartment with Rich, a guy who worked at Friberg before, which is Rich now. So like, economically, obviously, it's never been, I don't have to make freaking 30K a month, which maybe people are making today. I just need to, I love the game. I enjoy playing the game. It's been, for me, a hobby. I started playing when people didn't make money at all. I started 2005, which is late in some regard, but I've been playing the game from the get-go, basically in CSGO especially. So I've been, in that sense, unlucky, but at the same time, I've been lucky that I have been able to do this as a full-time job, and I'm super blessed, but I'm sad that maybe Swedish scene didn't have more or small organizations just to, put up some salary or invest in it. Like, that's what I'm saying. If if someone did eyeballers like JW and Flush are doing today for like 7-8 years ago, 2016, 2017, perfect time for it. Because then that could have been like the next, develop the next players, for example, to NIP or Fnatic or whatever. The Swedish scene kind of died off a little bit because of that we didn't have enough young teams, or that someone maybe didn't approach me or some of the old Fnatic players or the ex-pros basically, or ex-top tier players.
Right, when it came to this Dignitas project, this is where I actually know that the fans and the general public are way too cynical, because they actually thought that, like, basically it's almost like what you said. They always thought it's like, right, what happened was NIP back in the day used to be really good, but they didn't get to the era when you got the big salaries. I mean, the joke is, when you said earlier, like, we could have joined FaZe Clan, like, you should have. You'd had like 20K a month salary, like, it would have been insane. But no one knew it back then, to be fair. That was the early days, right? So what people thought, all they want is they want to come back and get a big salary from Dignitas, and it's like, remember, everyone's saying it's a retirement home. But I would just say this: when I did my interview with Flusher recently, and he talked about that last Fnatic run when he was with Brolan, and it was like the old guys and then Golden and Brolan, and he even himself described it like we were a bit delusional, because like we thought to ourselves, like, well, me, JW, and Crimson, we're the legends, like we've won everything. So essentially what he was implying was, even if maybe they weren't as good, they always thought like, but if we get the right mix again, we can still win, we can still be really good. And so their whole thing was like, cause Brolan's a young stud, we'll get this guy in, we'll sort of put him in like almost the Olaf role, as it were, and then we'll be back. And by the way, in that case, the reason I give that example is it happened. They won the events. They were a top team again. They were right among the top teams. So even if they were delusional to a fan, they were right. Like, there was some more to give, right? I know that in this project, that is what people thought. That is what people thought. We're not coming back to just be a retirement home and like lol, play an exhibition game. The idea was, we're actually going to make this a real team. We're bringing back the original players. Then we're getting Halzerk, who's like a young up and coming player, and hopefully we're actually going to try and be a real top team, right? This was a project that had ambition, right?
Definitely. Like, this was not like, especially not for me, or like, we even bought in Forrest from NIP. Like, Forrest wanted to do this so much, so he actually left NIP to do this project as well. So this was not like just to sit around and do content. We were looking at competing, and a bunch of like unfortunate things. For example, with Halzerk's visa issues, so he couldn't travel with us to Flashpoint, and then COVID happened and everything like that. Like, I would say though, like, I don't have the numbers or stats to back it up, but if you look at our results before we went to Flashpoint, we were competing. Like, Fnatic were number 1 in the world. I told you this before. Like, we beat Fnatic. We qualified for there was supposed to be a major in Brazil, I'm pretty sure, at that time as well.
Rio.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we qualified to that one. Like, we played good. Like, maybe not at the level we could do, but like, if we had time with Halzerk, I'm pretty sure we could have played really well at Flashpoint, for example, with Halzerk. Then obviously Flashpoint, it all just became people wanted to go travel home. Like, we didn't even want to be there.
Sure.
And we were kind of like, oh, it's safer to be here. Obviously, people didn't know the consequences about COVID and everything. But after, like, it was so unfortunate that our old project kind of died with that, unfortunately. Because obviously then the Flashpoint results were really lackluster. We played with Guardian, who was standing in. which is also obviously a great player, but like it didn't click at all for us. And one thing I would also say is that I think our ways to see the game was changed from obviously back a few years ago when we played with each other in an IP. I saw the game differently after, both being in-game leader, playing in like Heroic, like how much time we should put in and everything like that. Whereas so I think I would say the state of mind at least after Flashpoint, then the team was dead, unfortunately. We only kept playing for like a little bit longer before we removed the Get Right and Exist and brought in 2 new players. But yeah, obviously the goal with the team was to come back and to compete again. And I am sure I am delusional when I say it, but I'm thinking we could have been like a playoffs team in big tournaments if we had, the time and nothing that worked kind of against us with like, visa issues and COVID and everything. I'm thinking we could have done that definitely. We did have some good results and we did have a lot of fun with Halsrek as well in the beginning there. But unfortunately, we didn't even get the chance, I would say, with that lineup. That was a bit sad that
I mean, the craziest thing I would say is the only 2 LANs you got to play were 2 of the like RMRs. You got to do like 2021 for the Stockholm one, and then after that you did the Antwerp one. These are the only LANs in like 2 or 3 years in this team that you got to play because everything was online. And then eventually, by the end, it's just incredibly hard to qualify to LANs, right? So what is it like for you in that sense, Friberg? Because as you said earlier, like you were in the era when the travel was brutal. Like you used to really be traveling all the time. I mean, it was even worse than you described. Like the worst one used to be where there was the like travel day, but like that was like you arrive that day, do some media, and then the next day you start your first game. It's like there's not even any like warm up or breathing space. So it went from like the most brutal schedule ever to like you play 2 LANs in 3 years. That must have been really weird.
Yeah, I've always seen myself more of like a LAN player as well, especially like back in the IP days. I enjoyed being on LAN. I was usually a pretty loud guy on LAN as well. I could sit and I could shout at Kenny, for example, when we played against him or at the opponents. So that was really rough, especially like if you look back on the first iteration of Dignitas, we were a LAN team. Like that was our goal. We wouldn't sit and play online. We would qualify for events or get invited to events and go to events and do well. That was like the business idea or whatever, not the business idea, but like the idea of the team was to go to LANs because that's where we would thrive, being at the huge events, playing as people who are less experienced, and we would like, win with experience. So yeah, like just transitioning from traveling a lot to events, playing on LANs, and then like only online. That was really rough. I mean, also that like when Flashpoint kind of died out, we didn't have a league spot. So before 2020, when we joined Dignitas, we were literally like sitting and picking what team or like what league should we play in. Because obviously Dignitas, they were a part of Flashpoint. We did have some offers from other organizations who had like a ESL spot. But we went with Flashpoint. And unfortunately, it was the wrong decision now in hindsight for us. Even though I think Flashpoint would have been and could have been absolutely great if COVID didn't happen. We were kind of in no man's land after that. We were playing tier 2 tournaments. We were playing like I would say I lost a lot of the enjoyment of playing CS when we played all the tier 2 tournaments. It was so frustrating to sit and play these tier 2 tournaments week in, week out, and you were grinding the HLTV points just to get enough points so you could get invited to play a big tournament or to try to qualify. And then there would be a big tournament, and a team who ended up on last place, they would like brush through us or come above us in HLTV points because like they just attended a tournament. So that was like, it was rough years in Dignitas. I would say, like, even though we weren't as bad, whenever we got the opportunity, like we qualified for a blast event, we did pretty well, beat Liquid, beat some good teams. In practice, we knew what we could do, but I lost a lot of like the enjoyment just by sitting and only playing online and not traveling. Like that's what I enjoy the most with Counter-Strike, I think, like traveling to the bigger tournaments and like, getting into the mood where, okay, like we can actually come and we can win this tournament, and that like mindset, you lost that by just sitting and grinding tier 2 tournaments. You became like a robot, literally. So that was very devastating for me, I would say.
Oh, one thing I forgot to ask you before was when you were in OpTic and Heroic, what was it like when you would actually occasionally at tournaments play NIP? Is it weird to play when you, because like you said, you were in the team for 5 years. That becomes part of your identity. Is it weird to play against a team like that?
Yeah, definitely. It becomes extra important, and for me especially, to beat them. They're my friends. Like Forrest and GetRight still played at that time in NIP, so I wanted to win extra much. But I can tell the same. Like when we played Astralis, when I played in Heroic, I could also notice like our team, they did play a bit more scared. Like
Right.
you know, it is something special playing against your old teammates or good friends, or you know, like the best team from your country. It's something extra for all the players at least in the non-favorite team.
Right. Back in the day, you might remember this. It was at Dreamhack Cluj-Napoca. Another thing that happened related to Friberg was, because we had fifflaren on the desk, he gave what I will say, it's actually forgotten now, but it's a banger. Go back and look this clip up, guys. I'll link it on the YouTube video if I remember. He gave he gave this hilarious comparison where he explained Friberg's game by comparing it to the hero Spirit Breaker from Dota 2, because the idea is that you just go fucking mental and you just go all the way in, right? It's the idea, like, you know, which is a pretty funny one, right? So here's the obvious question I want to ask. I know you're a Dota fan. You played it a long, long time. What hero would fifflaren be?
Oi. What hero would fifflaren be? Fifflaren would be a Crystal Maiden, just, you know, sharing mana to all his team.
Perfect.
Supporting. Yeah, and being pretty as well, yeah?
Okay, yes, exactly. The good looks.
Nah, but I remember, like, we talked a lot with fifflaren back then, and, like, obviously he also wanted me, or my role in that NIP team to change. I took a step back from being entry to throw nades, and I shouldn't have done that, like I said as well. He also told me, like, you should be, Exist should be doing the nades, or someone else should be doing the nades, like... So, yeah, I kind of, my identity got kind of lost, and that's kind of like what he implied on that desk house as well with that comment, I'm pretty sure.
By the way, along those lines, I'll ask you this question. I asked him it as well, right? Back in the day, I actually used to think it was pretty legit from him, because at the time he was trying to make like analysis his full-time thing. I always thought it was pretty legit that, like, dude, if he actually really didn't think Nip was the favourite, he would pick against you. In fact, famously at that Malmo one, he picked against you all. We were both just picking against an IP. Though, like, I even used to think, like, surely you're going to pick them, for fuck's sake. But he actually did. And here's the thing. Even though everyone's friendly, I know, like, pretty sweet people like GetRight don't fucking like it if you pick against them. Even if they're friends with you, they get salty. Like, were you guys a bit salty towards him when he was on the desk sometimes?
No, not at all. I mean, he did. Robin is, like, in my eyes, also one of the great Counter-Strike minds of the game. If he thinks we won't win, I'll let him think that. I don't mind it. Okay. I'm sure, like you said, I think GetRight, he would be the guy who would walk up to him after and say, hey, why didn't you bet on us to win, huh? Sure. But I'm not like that, not at all.
Okay. Right, at the end of this interview, Friberg, do you have a final message? Is there someone you want to thank or say hello to?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say thank you to, I guess, all my teammates in the past. I've had a lot of, like, obviously, my career. Like, I haven't officially retired yet. You know, if someone would shoot out a message, I might still jump on the server and play. I'd still play daily. But I want to shout out at least to, like, all the players I have played with, all the coaches and stuff like that. It becomes a lot like, you know, a family when you're playing in a team. The amount of time that you're spending with the teammates on a server and outside of the server, it is insane. So obviously I've had so much fun playing with a lot of people in the past. Special shout out, I guess, to, like I said, Hector before, OpTic, to the guys in Dignitas as well. I think we had a great time in Dignitas. They took care of us really well, and we've both seen, like, the good side and the bad side of, like, management from teams. So yeah, shout out to them as well. And special shout out, I guess, to the old Nip boys, to Forrest, fifflaren, Exist, and GetRight. Obviously, we had an amazing journey from, like, what we did, and not only on the server, but, like, outside of the server as well. Like, for example, we all went to, like, Forest wedding a few years back and stuff that. And we're still good friends. So yeah, huge shout out to them as well. And especially, like, to all the fans as well. We have been one of the most popular teams in Sweden, at least when we had great fans interaction. And I guess, like, one of the good things NIP did back in the days was, like, sponsor activations that we went and we actually met up with our fans, and we built a great amount of fans and people who enjoyed cheering for us. So shout out to all the people who have still maybe at some point coming up to on the street and saying hi to me. I still enjoy that. So yeah, and thank you to you, Thorin, as well for having me.
Yeah, tack så mycket.
Tack så mycket.
Hear me now, because the thing is, I wouldn't be able to get all the work I do without my brethren, the man dem, in the Skrilluminati, my Patreon community, because this video, like all of them on my channel, is kindly supported by Frisky, Matt Pugnaccio Racula, Ahmed Haju, Jensen Gore, Tobias Bernasconi, Animosity, Toucan, Tosh, and you know it, a special thanks always goes out to Jerky's Minion, who always has my back. Would you like to ask a question in my regular AMAs? Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest I could take in my work? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are going to be. Maybe you want to be part of those lengthy esports discussions I do with my top donators. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today, where? Via the Patreon link in the description box below.